I know it just became 2.8, but version 3.0 is just around the corner. And just like other gacha games on the market, Wuthering Waves is no exception when it comes to shifting up the meta by introducing new mechanics and releasing new units that can help with those mechanics. And this is important because I think Chisa is about to change up the entire meta of Wuthering Waves going into 3.0. My name is Braxophone, but you can call me Brax, and today I want to talk about Chisa and how her kit actually defines what we have to look forward to in 3.0. Now, if you were around for version 2.0, then you know that Kuro Games released some elemental effects around that time, and only some of them have been actually used. The elemental effects introduced were Arrow Erosion, Havoc Bane, Fusion Burst, Glacio Chafe, and Electro Flare. And for some reason, Spectrofrazzle isn't on this graphic, but that also exists. Upon release, these were basically all glorified damage over time effects. Arrow Erosion is an arrow damage over time that increases the amount of damage based on the amount of stacks that are there. Havoc Bane is a debuff that accumulates a bunch of damage and does it in a burst and then removes Havoc Bane. Fusion Burst stacks up, and once it reaches max stacks, it explodes for high fusion damage. Glacio Chafe affects the speed of the enemies that it is applied to, or the characters. And Electro Flare is another stacking debuff that actually decreases the target's attack. This was the case for all of the new characters that came out in the 2.x series, and honestly, very few characters actually took advantage of it. The main powerful DPS characters were Zani and Cardathea, but even Ember stacks for Zani don't really count as the same thing as Spectrofrazzle. She just does Spectrofrazzle type damage. Cardathea's entire kit revolves around Arrow Erosion and Arrow Erosion damage. Though I won't lie, the damage over time thing doesn't really align with what Cardathea is doing, but that's neither here nor there. The character is completely functional. But just recently, there was a massive change to how these negative effects actually work. Arrow Erosion was unchanged, which is to be expected as there's already a character who takes advantage of them. But for things like Havoc Bane, Fusion Burst, Glacio Chafe, and Electro Flare, there's no character that's out there dishing out tons of damage utilizing these effects. And Chisa has now come in as a character that can apply Havoc Bane to enemies. Now, I actually first noticed this when reading the Havoc Bane ability after I saw that Chisa can apply it. And Havoc Bane has been changed. Now, Havoc Bane actually shreds enemy defense. It can stack up to 3 times without assistance from other character effects, and each stack is up to 2% of enemies' defense, meaning that Havoc Bane can reduce enemies' defense by 6%. Now that, coupled with her ability to give your team some defense ignore up to 18%, means that at max Havoc Bane stacks, Chisa will allow your team to ignore up to 24% of enemies' defense, which is absolutely huge. But that really got me thinking. I'm on some conspiracy tinfoil hat right now, because in 2.8 they've also done a couple other things, including changing how some other effects work as well. For example, Electro Flare also just got changed. It no longer shreds attack and instead deals electro damage over time, but once you reach max stacks, you actually get a new stacking effect called Electro Rage, which when triggered will actually increase the amount of damage that you get to do with your Electro Flare. Now, this emphasis on negative statuses has really interesting timing, because in 2.8 they're releasing a character that actually can apply Havoc Bane and shred defense. Defense shred as a concept isn't really new, but being put on a support healing character like Chisa, which by the way, she heals and can also shield your team, seems really intentional. I don't just mean like, oh, they're gonna release this new character and they want her to be good. No, I mean, we are about to go into version 3.0, which is going to have a completely different vibe from 2.0. This means they're going to be changing up the meta, and what this means to me that they're adding some kind of defense shred is that we may see elements actually start to matter, and Chisa will be a character that can help you get through that without even having the right elements. Chisa is a healing, shielding support character that can allow you to ignore defense and apply Havoc Bane for even more defense ignore, which means that if you play her with Shorekeeper, then the healing from Shorekeeper is a little redundant, no? The fact that she can heal and shield tells me that she's actually meant to go in the slot that Shorekeeper's in most teams. This aligns with the flexibility of her kit very well, but the interesting thing is her best teammates don't even all exist yet, and there's the potential for a lot of them. We are talking 4 brand new negative statuses that we have not seen in the game yet, potentially being new main damage dealing characters that Chisa can support. How interesting is it that they cherry-picked some negative statuses to change this patch, while also releasing a character that buffs negative statuses? But wait, I haven't actually told you about that. Now, I have ADHD and sometimes I skip a step to get from point A to point D. So let me give you a little bit more evidence of the step C that I skipped over. Exhibit, whatever letter you want to put here. Chisa's outro skill increases the amount of negative status stacks you can have for 15 seconds. Now, these stacks are not built equally because I know I said earlier 24% defense shred on Chisa, but what if I told you that I lied to you less than 3 minutes ago? Because actually, Chisa with her outro skill can actually give you the ability to put 6 Havoc Bane stacks on enemies, totaling 12% from Havoc Bane and 18% from her personal kit, which leaves you at 30% defense shred. But her outro skill isn't just for Havoc Bane, it can apply to every single negative status. Now, I just think this is a really interesting time to put in a character that's focused on defense shredding and negative statuses because we already have characters that are fully all in on negative statuses. That is Cardithia and her team. And we also have Spectrofrazzle as well. But there are so many negative statuses that we have not touched, and releasing a universal negative status support with defense shred that also can heal and shield you seems like an indicator that we are going to have a new best healer going into version 3.0 and the new zones. Right now, Chisa, I'm gonna be honest, guys, nothing super special. She's not like best in slot in every single team ever, but I don't think that's going to be the case forever. I think there's going to be a lot of teams that she's very strong in going forward because the extra 3 stacks on her outro skill can be very helpful, especially when added with her defense ignore mechanics. In fact, I think Chisa is going to end up being a sleeper hit that a lot of people will skip for her meta usage not being that strong right now and regret later on once they add more negative status characters to the roster and you'll want a character other than Shorekeeper on your second team in the Tower of Adversity. I think Chisa's being doomed right now by people that are looking at her numbers with current teams, but if you look at the cycle of gacha games and how they release characters and how they always are meant to pair with other characters in the future, it's pretty safe to say that I think Chisa is going to define a brand new meta of negative statuses going into version 3.0. I don't think every character will have it, and I'll be honest, in 2.x, it didn't make full sense for every character to have it because, well, imagine if you're fighting the Greeks and Romans and they run up to you with like 500 people and then they just poke you with a torch and then you take fire damage to death. That doesn't seem very epic or cool, does it? But there actually is another piece of evidence that I have to support this theory, and I completely forgot about it until I got to about this point in the recording, so let me show you that as well. I've already talked a lot about Chisa and how much value I think she's actually going to get in the future, but there's also a combat event called Tactical Simulacra in version 2.8, and in this specific variant of Tactical Simulacra, there is a weakness system. Now, I don't know that this will necessarily be in 3.0, however, I do think that it is likely that Kuro Games is going to want to switch it up and spice it up for version 3.0, and what better way to do that than to actually do something with their elemental system? And what better way to change up the elemental system than to change how some of the effects actually work to make them a little bit more unique and release a support character that can work with tons of different elemental negative statuses. Also, continuing my tinfoil hat theory here, let's say that in version 3.0, they decided to take the weakness system from Tactical Simulacra. Well, if they applied that to other mobs, then you might be forced to use specific elements. However, if you had a character that, let's say, I don't know, ignored enemy defense, that might make it a lot easier to deal with. So with that said, you guys, I think that Chisa is a sleeper hit, and I do think that she is completely underrated right now, because even though she's not best in slot for a ton of different teams, she works pretty well with the negative effect characters we have right now, especially Cardithia, and she is a distinct style change from the other characters we have seen throughout the 2.x series. I really think Chisa is going to be a very important part of 3.x, but I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I just had to put this out there.